Aloha, I'm Yanji Denise. Welcome to Get Your House in Order, where we help you take care of the things that matter most. In this series, we cover a wide range of topics from health and wellness to financial readiness and preparing for every phase of life. Today, we are talking about funeral planning. That's a subject that can be pretty tough for most of us, but can be made a little easier with the right kind of planning and communication. Now, before we dive into that, I'm joined by Paulette Ito, Senior Vice President at Hawaiian Financial Federal Credit Union. Now, Paulette, this is a pretty tough topic, but it really gets to the heart of what Get Your House in Order is all about.
Absolutely. By getting together with your family and creating a funeral plan, or at least knowing what you want your wishes to be known to your family, that's very important.
Yeah, tell us about Get Your House in Order.
Well, Get Your House in Order is being able to be prepared for anything that life could throw at you, whether it's your financial health, physical health, mental health, spiritual health. So that's what Get Your House in Order is. It's just being prepared so that you can live your life to the fullest.
Tell us about the guidebooks and the resources that you put together.
The resource books we have is called the Ho'okele. It's the Navigator. It's being able to map out your journey for being prepared, getting your house in order. So we have 1.1 and 1.2 that's already out. We'll be having 1.3 and 1.4 shortly, and it's available at our website.
Okay, and these are things that are fun and light, like family traditions, family recipes, the good stuff of life, and some of the tougher topics too, like advance directive and funeral planning.
Absolutely, because life is a journey, and there's so many different things that we experience in our lives. You know, there's the fun times of having children, there's, finding a new job, investing, but there's also, like you said, health directives and funeral planning. And with funeral planning, you want to be able to have your wishes be done. You don't want to leave it up to chance. You don't want to have someone in control of what you want to actually have happen.
Right, and the wishes that we have, they're so different person to person.
Oh, absolutely. I was just talking to a friend and they want their ashes scattered. And then I have another friend who says she's too afraid and she wouldn't want her other half to put her in the water. So yes, it's absolutely something you need to have a discussion with your family.
Okay, and why did, when you think about a credit union, you don't necessarily think of those folks taking on this kind of topic. Why did the credit union feel like this was important to do?
Get Your House in Order. We do concentrate on your financial health, but you as a whole person is more than just your finances. We know that there is a definite correlation between your financial health and your physical health, your mental health, and your spiritual health. So we want to be able to take care of the whole person, not just their financial health.
And where do we go to learn more?
Come to our website, hificu.com. You can go to a landing page that we have all the resources available.
Okay, thank you, Paulette. Still ahead, we're going to speak with two experts who will tell us more about how to make these important arrangements, both for yourself and for those you love. But first, we'll hear from someone whose story shows us why this kind of planning is so important.
Aloha, my name is Bonnie. I'm from Honolulu, and this is my story. The story that I'd like to share is a friend of mine who recently passed. And a few years ago, we had a talk about pre-planning. And as a friend, I wanted to know what he would like so that when that time comes, should he pass before me, I wanted to be there to take care of things. And he shared with me that he wanted to be cremated. And I asked him, let's go ahead and have a plan in place. But that never materialized, and he passed early this year. Because he shared with me that he wanted to be cremated, I knew that much to know that he was going to be cremated, and I helped him with that. And I'm so grateful that I knew that much, and as a friend, I got to honor his final wishes. If we didn't have that conversation, it would have been a really painful decision. Every decision made would have been a painful one because I would never know. And I'm sharing this story because this is such an important decision that we make for our loved ones or friends. And knowing what their wishes are is so important because we want to be there to make sure that every decision is for them, to give us a peace of mind. And this is my story. Thank you.
For all your money needs, Hawaiian Financial Federal Credit Union is here for you. Visit hificu.com.
Welcome back. Joining us now are Revere Akiu and Pat Newalu of Hawaiian Memorial Park Cemetery and Funeral Services. It's great to have you both here. You know, as we noted with our conversation with Paulette, this can be a tough subject for some families, but Pat, we'll start with you. Why would someone go about pre-planning their funeral services?
Well, it's always best to pre-plan because, you know, when you face a loss, there's a lot of things that have to happen during probably one of the most difficult times of our lives. So pre-planning allows you to make a lot of decisions ahead of time and take care of some of the financial parts of, you know, or the financial burdens that come with taking care of our final expenses or our final needs.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit about, you know, why it's important to make those choices for yourself as opposed to leaving those decisions to your loved ones.
Well, I think we're all used to preparing for things that will happen or may happen. And why not make the decisions now for something we know that will happen, for sure. Mm-hmm. And then it's about protecting our loved ones, making those decisions in advance so that they don't have to make those decisions when, like Pat said, is one of the most hardest times in their lives.
Yeah, and for families who come to you and they haven't done that pre-planning, what kind of conversations, what kind of struggles do you see them go through?
You know, everything happens so fast at that time, and it's a lot of times it's unexpected. And even if it is something that was expected, they're making some major decisions in a very short period of time. And so if you do it in advance, you just have more time to think about it. You have time to talk to your loved ones about it and make better decisions, more informed decisions.
Yeah, and Pat, I'd imagine for the family members, it takes a lot of the burden off of them. They can focus on grieving their loved ones, celebrating their life, as opposed to having to make these choices when they don't necessarily know what the relative would have wanted.
Yes, and especially here in Hawaii where we have larger families, you know, and you're working in a short window of time. So for everyone to come together and agree on what type of services and, you know, what type of arrangements they would like to make. Yeah, that can be difficult.
Yeah, tell us about some of the options that are out there.
Well, we want to make sure that we talk about this with our families ahead of time, and we know what our final disposition would be. Would we like to be cremated, or would we like more of the traditional burial type of funeral service, public service, or just private? There's a lot of decisions that have to be made, so planning ahead of time makes it a lot easier for the families and the loved ones.
And when you're walking people through that choice process, I don't necessarily think of necessarily what's more popular, but what are the ups and downsides to both kinds of services that she's talking about?
I think it really comes to what matters most is the preferences of that individual, what they're accustomed to a lot of times, what they're used to, what their family does, what their traditions are. So it really comes down to their personal preferences and what they want and what suits their needs, basically.
And when should someone start thinking about this? I mean, it's hard to think of a time marker or like a certain age, but generally, when do clients come to you?
You know, death is one of the most difficult things to talk about, and not everybody has that conversation. I think we advise families to talk about it at least as early as possible. It is something that you want to take care of as soon as possible, because what you're doing is you're protecting yourself from inflation. And then, you know, the sooner you get it done, the less you have to worry. So it's a lot of peace of mind.
Yeah, there's a benefit financially to that. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Definitely, like everything else, right? There's inflation. So when you purchase a funeral plan in advance, you're actually paying for it today, and you know that you won't be using it for, you know, decades, maybe, possibly. So the earlier you do it, the better, because you're locking in the prices. And later on, when the time comes and there's a need, you're going to get the services that you selected and that you paid for. So it's always a great time to start. You know, I know it's not an easy conversation to have, but doing it in advance gives you at least peace of mind, and that knowing that you have something in place, and that your family won't have to make those decisions and go through, you know, the financial hardship of gathering the funds and having to take care of it at a difficult time.
That does make a lot of sense. We'll have much more with Revere and Pat, including more about how much these services can cost, what's covered, and what isn't. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Why pre-plan funeral services? Pre-planning funeral services can help your family avoid emotional turmoil and financial burden at a time of loss. Making such important decisions ahead of time protects your family and ensures your final wishes are followed. When to begin? It's best to start planning funeral services planning sooner rather than later. Buying a funeral plan in advance protects against rising prices and provides valuable peace of mind.
Long's Drugs is always here for Hawaii, providing your family with their local favorites, accessible health and wellness services to keep you safe and healthy. Make Long's a part of your day.
Welcome back. We are speaking today with Revere Akiu and Pat Nevalu of Hawaiian Memorial Park Cemetery and Funeral Services. Let's continue where we left off. This idea that, you know, some folks in Hawaii, they're used to going to the ocean to scatter the ashes of their loved ones. They might think, I don't need that kind of a plan. I just want something simple by the sea. What do you say to those folks?
We do get that a lot, and you know, obviously it is common in Hawaii to scatter their cremated remains in the ocean. But they will need minimally a cremation plan for us to pick up their loved one, perform the cremation, and then they would take their cremated remains home with them.
Yeah. And so tell us, what is covered in a general plan? I know that they can probably range in services, but sort of at the basic level, what is covered in these kinds of services?
So there's a lot of things that have to take place when death occurs and taking care of your loved one. So in the funeral plan, what's included would be there's a lot of legal things that need to happen, and a lot of permitting, a lot of authorizations for final disposition. So bringing you into our care, yes, once death occurs, and then preparing you for either your services or cremation. And then with pre-planning comes the final resting place, right? Final resting place, thinking about how you want to memorialize your loved one. That can be all included in your pre-arrangements.
Mm-hmm. And generally, how much does these kinds of services cost?
They could, with a simple cremation like we were talking about earlier, it could start at approximately $4,000. And then if you go to one of our premier packages or traditional burial packages, it probably would range anywhere between $15,000 or more.
Yeah, and because of that kind of a price point, this is definitely something that you probably want to take care of yourselves or figure out how to pay for within your family, as opposed to in that time of grief. I mean, I myself, experienced the death of a very close family member, and when you're making those decisions, because it was so unexpected, it's really hard. It's so emotional, and you don't want to skip on price, of course, especially in that scenario, but you're not making the best rational decisions. Right. Yeah, exactly. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there's so many benefits to pre-planning, and you mentioned a lot of them. Locking in the prices at today's cost, protecting yourself from inflation, making the decisions together with your spouse, and letting your family know your wishes. And then financially, if you do it in advance, one thing we can do is we have incentives for the customers, and then we can customize it to your budget. And then you can make monthly installments, so you don't have to put down $15,000, in advance or at one time. Mm-hmm. So there's some of the benefits.
Let's say you go through this process, you create this plan for yourself. Who do you need to tell in your own family that these plans exist? You don't want to necessarily, not everyone's comfortable sharing these wishes, right? And you don't want to have to negotiate them in the moment. So what do you say to people who create this plan? Who do they share it with?
Well, we have a really nice personal planning guide that we provide to families, and it's complimentary. And that's where you would record all of your wishes, all of your prearrangements and important information. And then, so you would keep it in the home and just let your loved ones know where it is. You don't have to go through all of the details, but at least it gives them a place of reference and a starting point. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in sharing that with your family, like we said, we don't necessarily want to share all the details, but you don't want this to be a surprise.
Definitely not. You want your family to know that you did take care of this. And again, a benefit of that is creating peace of mind in your home.
Yeah. Well, such interesting insights. Stay with us. We'll have more with Pat and Revere on the other side of this break.
Options. Pre-planning funeral service options include traditional burial or cremation, as well as public or private services. Such decisions are based on personal preference and family traditions. Services. Funeral service planning requires many elements such as legal documentation, permits, and authorizations for final disposition. This authorization is not just for when death occurs, but includes the preparation for services and cremations. Traditional Hawaiian Ocean celebrations of life require cremation services. In the pre-planning process, consider the final resting place and how you would like to memorialize your loved one.
Windows Hawaii. Trust Windows Hawaii.
Welcome back. We are speaking today about funeral arrangements with Revere Akiu and Pat Nevalu of Hawaiian Memorial Park Cemetery and Funeral Services. So we've talked a lot about how to do this plan for oneself. What about helping some of the older relatives in your family, or just relatives in general, do these plans? What kind of conversations? How do you start that conversation perhaps with an elderly relative?
Yeah, that can be kind of sensitive at times, but it is necessary. And you know, it's just about asking them, you know, what would they want, what is their wishes, and kind of maybe tied into what their family members have done in the past.
That's a great idea. Yeah, what is your advice to folks who want to broach that conversation with mom or dad, but want to also be sensitive to how they're feeling about their age and their health and whatever they're going through in the moment?
That happens a lot. You know, sometimes they just do not want to discuss it, and but in reality, it's the children or the close family members that's going to have to take care of things when death occurs. So, for that, in that situation, oftentimes it's the children that come forward and they go ahead and make prearrangements as best as they can. You know, have something in place. Maybe without getting all the details, you know, out there for that mother or father or grandmother, grandfather.
That makes sense. And how do we know, you know, how long is this plan good for? Is it good in perpetuity? And let's say you change your mind about it. Can you change, you know, when I was 30, I wanted this kind of service. Now I'm 60, I want something totally different.
That does happen all the time. Things change all the time. If it changes, it's not a problem. Just come and see us again, and we'll help you make those changes that you want. How long does it last? As long as everything is secured financially and it's all paid up in full, it'll last until it's needed, basically.
Okay. And is 100% of the cost of the funeral covered within the plan? Are there additional costs that come up at the time of the service?
At the time of need, there's always going to be other incidentals that need to be taken care of, but for the most part, it's minimal. As long as we pre-plan and we do a good job of putting those plans in place and securing them, yes.
Yeah, and I'm curious, just generally speaking, when do people start to come to you trying to make these arrangements?
You know, normally it's when somebody passes away in their family and they actually go through a death themselves. That's usually when it's right at the forefront of their mind. And that's when they start thinking about what's going to happen when they pass away or another person in their family passes away. And that's usually when they think about it, and they'll come and ask for information and questions from us.
That makes sense. What would you tell people who are starting out this process? What would you want them to know about how to begin this? Because none of us want to think about this time in our lives.
That's a good question. But you know, it's better if they come and meet with us. There's no obligation. It's just a nice conversation, and these are things that we don't talk about in our normal day-to-day lives. So starting that conversation and then deciding on where to begin. You know, we do cemetery tours on a daily basis, and it's not as bad, you know, when you're not facing that situation, or you're not in that situation today. So it's a great, no time is the best time, but today, right?
Right. And how detailed can these plans get? I mean, if you think about, I know for myself at this point in my life, I'd want a big party. Do you help with that kind of part as well? Or is it just simply what happens to me, you know, physically?
Yeah, just generally what are their wishes, what their preferences are for their disposition. We do get into the details of, do they want a service or no service, you know, how simple they want it. So they can, the details, we leave it up to them though, because it's a very personal service that they're gonna have with their family. And so it's about what they want at that time, in that moment.
I want to ask you before we end, what's the one thing that you would tell folks who are just starting this process? What do you wish people knew?
I would like to get out there and have this conversation with everyone, because we absolutely want everyone to know about it and know that there's such a thing as pre-planning and what needs to take place. And we definitely don't want people to come in at that time unprepared or unaware.
And what about you?
You know, I mentioned it earlier, we all prepare for a car accident. We all prepare if we have a fire at home. So doesn't it make sense to prepare for something that we know will happen? So like Pat said, the best time to do it is today.
Such important information. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for watching. Remember, you can always catch us on YouTube to watch other episodes or watch this show again. I'm Yanji Denise. Thanks for being here. Until next time, take care of yourself and aloha.